Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be looking into the return of Syrian rebels to Aleppo
Oh,
after 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. They haven't been there since 2016. And we're going to be looking at a CNN article on this
Okay.
and kind of try to figure out what this means for Aleppo and the larger Syrian war.
Yeah, this is really interesting because, for years now the Syrian conflict has just been kind of
Yep.
a stalemate,
Yeah, it's been static for a long time.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting.
This is a big development.
And I was reading the article,
Yeah.
and I was just blown away by how fast
Oh,
this
yeah.
happened. Like the rebels,
Uh-huh.
they just kind of swept through these villages outside the city,
Yeah.
and it was like a surprise attack.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're inside Aleppo.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how organized they must be to
Right.
pull something like this off. They must have had support. They must have been planning this for a while.
Yeah, and they're not just like in a little corner of Aleppo.
Yeah.
The article is talking about like
Right.
rebels waving flags in the central square. They're at the Citadel,
Wow.
and there were even claims that they're controlling the airport.
The airport.
Yeah, I mean CNN couldn't verify that.
Oh, okay.
On-
But still, though, if they had the airport,
If they have the airport, that's
that would be a huge deal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not just symbolic anymore. That's like a strategic advantage. Supplies can come in,
right.
people can come in.
Yeah.
They could even use it as a base for more operations.
Right.
It really shows how much control they want.
So it's not a complete takeover, though, is it?
Apparently.
I mean, the article was saying something about the northeastern neighborhood still being held by
Yeah, that's the thing.
government forces and Iranian-backed militias.
It's like you have a city divided
Right.
with all these different armed groups all right next to each other.
Oh, it's got to be so dangerous.
Oh, it's incredibly dangerous. It's like a powder keg ready to explode.
Yeah.
It could get much worse very quickly.
And all this is going on, but then the article mentions that people in Aleppo
Yeah.
are saying that there wasn't that much fighting.
You're real.
Yeah, inside the city when it was taken over.
That is interesting.
So I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
why that was.
Well, I mean, maybe the government forces, they were just demoralized.
Right.
Or they got caught totally by surprise.
Right.
Or maybe they decided to just kind of back off and regroup,
Yeah, regroup.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought it was just a better position for them
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure.
And I was thinking, too, like, Russia's really busy with Ukraine,
Oh, absolutely.
and Iran's got its own issues.
Right?
So I wonder if that's affecting
Oh, yeah.
how much they can support the Syrian government.
No, I think you're spot on. That kind of external pressure can really shape what happens on the ground. It reminds us that this isn't just some internal Syrian thing. It's
Right.
all
look
connected
at
with
that.
all these other global players.
And speaking of those global players, I mean, Russia's still involved.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The article talks about airstrikes that are targeting rebel positions in Aleppo and in Idlib province.
Wow.
So it's clear that
Well, they're not backing down.
yeah, they are not backing down.
But, it's not just Russia that we have to think about.
Right.
The Kurdish militia, the YPG, they're in the mix too.
Yeah.
The article mentions that they've been expanding their control into areas that the Syrian government used to hold.
Wow. So,
So now you've got even more factions vying for control.
yeah.
It just gets more and more complicated.
Well, and the article also mentions that there's been tension
Yeah.
between the YPG
Mm-hmm.
and other rebel groups in the past.
Yeah, there's definitely a history there.
There's definitely a history. So now that they're all kind of in the same area,
Mm.
it makes you think, how's that going to...
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, the article states that there have already been clashes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, between the rebel factions and Kurdish fighters.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, very unstable situation.
That's a big red flag.
Yeah.
These divisions within the opposition, they've always been a problem.
Right.
And it makes you wonder,
yeah.
can they really put aside their differences
Right.
and unite against a common enemy?
Can they actually get along?
Yeah, exactly.
So the group behind this offensive that the article talks about is called
Yeah, what is it?
the Military Operations Command.
Okay.
And it's a coalition of Islamist and moderate rebel groups.
Interesting.
And some of these groups
Oh,
used to be backed by the U.S.
Oh, wow.
And they're saying that their goal is to push back against the Syrian government
Uh-huh.
and their Iranian allies.
Right.
So
It's interesting, the timing of all of this.
Yeah.
It seems very deliberate. Like they're taking advantage of the fact that Russia's got their hands full with Ukraine and Iran's dealing with their own problems.
Yeah. It's almost like...
It's almost like they're waiting for the perfect moment to strike.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, is this a real attempt to change the power dynamics in Syria?
Yeah.
Or is this just kind of a temporary blip, in this long and complicated conflict?
Yeah. It's a good question.
It is.
And to understand it all, I think we need to remember that this is just the latest chapter in a war that's been going on for a very long time.
Absolutely. This all goes back to the Arab Spring uprisings in 2011.
Right.
Those protests against Assad that turned into a full-blown rebellion.
And then led to the Free Syrian Army.
Yeah.
And it's just been chaos ever since.
And the human cost is just unimaginable.
Yeah.
Over 300,000 civilians dead, millions displaced.
That's incredible.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah. And it's so sad to think about the people in Aleppo and all they've been through.
They've endured so much.
And this is just another layer.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Absolutely heartbreaking. It's easy to get caught up in all the military stuff and the strategy.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the people,
Right.
The human cost of this conflict.
Yeah, I mean, what are we thinking are some of the biggest concerns?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you have to think about the civilians who are trapped in the middle of all this fighting.
Uh-huh.
Aleppo has already been through so much. Years of bombardment, sieges, street fighting.
Yeah.
This is just going to add to their trauma,
And we were talking earlier about how millions have been displaced during the Syrian civil war.
Yeah.
Could this fighting in Aleppo trigger even more displacement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when the fighting gets bad, people flee.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever it takes to protect themselves and their families.
Right.
So we could easily see a mass exodus from Aleppo.
Yeah.
And that's going to put a huge strain on resources, create a humanitarian crisis.
Right. And where would these people even go?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
I mean, neighboring countries like Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan,
they've
already taken in so many Syrian refugees.
Right.
I don't know how much more they can handle.
Right.
The international community really needs to step up and provide aid.
I mean, the scale of this humanitarian crisis is just mind-boggling.
It is.
The article mentioned over 300,000 civilians dead already.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that number is just going to keep going up with this fighting in Aleppo?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, urban warfare is incredibly dangerous for civilians.
Yeah.
There's so much potential for collateral damage. Right. Protecting civilians should be the top priority for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But sadly, it rarely is.
It rarely is.
Yeah.
And beyond just the immediate dangers, you
Yeah.
have to think about the long-term impact on the people of Aleppo.
Absolutely.
I mean, their city has been devastated.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to rebuild your life after something like this?
It's not just about rebuilding buildings and infrastructure.
Right.
It's about healing the psychological wounds of war.
Yeah, the trauma.
The trauma, the loss, the displacement,
Yeah.
that has a lasting impact. And it's
Yeah.
going to take a long-term commitment from the international community to help them recover.
So the consequences of this conflict are far-reaching.
Oh, absolutely.
What are we thinking are some of the broader implications of this fighting in Aleppo?
Well, I mean, the Syrian civil war has already destabilized the entire region.
Right.
You've got refugees flowing into neighboring countries.
Mhm.
It's straining resources. It's fueling tensions.
Yeah.
And this latest development, it could make things even worse.
Yeah.
And it could even draw other actors into the conflict.
And the article mentioned Russia's continuing involvement with those airstrikes targeting rebel positions.
Yeah.
How do you think their actions in Aleppo are going to play into the bigger geopolitical picture?
Well, Russia's intervention in Syria has been a game changer.
They've really tipped the scales in favor of Assad.
Yeah.
And what they're doing in Aleppo is part of a bigger strategy.
Okay.
They want to project power, secure their interests in the region,
Right.
and basically challenge Western influence.
And we can't forget about Iran either.
Oh, of course not.
I mean, they've been supporting the Syrian government with their own militias.
Right.
How do you think their involvement is going to affect things?
Well, Iran sees Syria as a crucial ally in the region,
Right.
and they've invested a lot in keeping Assad in power.
Yeah.
Their involvement in Aleppo just adds another layer of complexity to this whole mess.
Right.
And it raises concerns about whether the conflict could spread beyond Syria's borders
Yeah.
and further destabilize the region.
I mean, we've already seen cross-border clashes and
Perfect.
fighters moving back and forth.
Right.
Is there a risk that this could escalate into a wider regional war?
It's a risk we can't ignore.
Yeah.
I mean, the Syrian conflict has become a proxy war.
You've got all these regional and international powers
Mm-hmm.
backing different sides.
Right.
So any escalation in Aleppo could have unpredictable consequences.
Yeah.
It could draw in neighboring countries
Right.
and spark a much wider conflict.
What about the United States?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, the article mentioned that some of the rebel groups involved
Right.
were previously supported by the U.S.
Yeah.
What's their position on all this?
Well, the U.S. has had a really complicated role in the Syrian conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, they've given some support to certain rebel groups in the past, but it's been limited and inconsistent.
Yeah.
And this situation in Aleppo puts them in a tough spot. They want to weaken Assad,
Right.
but they also don't want to get dragged further into this conflict.
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act.
So on one hand, they might see this rebel offensive as a good thing.
Right.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
they don't want to get caught in the crossfire.
They're worried about unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And we also have to remember the threat of extremist groups.
Right.
You know, groups like ISIS.
Yeah.
They thrive in chaos and instability.
Right.
And the last thing anyone wants is another breeding ground for terrorism.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So we're back to our original question.
Yeah.
What does this rebel takeover of Aleppo really mean for the future of this conflict?
It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I mean, is this a turning point
Yeah.
or just another chapter in a war that never seems to end? It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
This situation is so fluid and unpredictable.
Yeah.
There are so many different players with their own agendas.
Right.
Trying to predict the outcome is like trying to predict the weather weeks in advance.
So what are some possible scenarios?
Well, okay. Well, one scenario is that the rebels, they managed to hold on to Aleppo.
Okay.
You know, they push back any counterattacks from the government.
Okay.
If that happens,
Yeah.
that would be a huge win for the opposition.
Yeah.
And it could really, you know, tip the scales. Yeah.
In this conflict?
So what would that mean for Assad? I mean, if he
Right.
loses Aleppo,
Yeah, if he loses Aleppo.
what does that do to his regime?
Oh, it would be a major blow. I mean,
Yeah.
both militarily and symbolically.
Okay.
It would show that his regime is vulnerable,
Right?
and it could really embolden the opposition in other parts of the country.
Okay. So, but we talked about how divided the opposition is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, is there a chance that if they actually do take control of Aleppo,
Right.
that they'll just start fighting amongst themselves?
That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to unite against a common enemy,
Right.
but once you've achieved victory,
Yeah.
staying united can be even harder.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a real risk of infighting.
Like they win the battle but lose the war.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's one scenario.
Yeah.
What else could happen?
Well, another possibility, and maybe even more likely in the short term,
Okay.
is that we just see this kind of grind on
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
you know, prolonged stalemate.
Neither side's strong enough to really win, so
Yeah.
they just keep fighting.
Oh, that would be awful.
Yeah, it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Especially for the civilians.
Yeah, a never-ending war.
Pretty much.
Is there any hope for like a peace agreement?
Well, a negotiated settlement would be the best outcome,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
I mean, this conflict has been marked by failed peace talks,
Right.
broken ceasefires,
Uh-huh.
and just a deep mistrust between the different sides.
Right.
And then you add in all the external actors.
Right. All the different countries involved.
Yeah, everyone's got their own agenda.
Yeah.
So any peace process would need everyone to be on board.
That's a lot of people to get on board.
Yeah, it would take a lot of compromise,
Yeah.
concessions,
Yeah.
and a willingness to let go of the past.
Easier said than done.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got these different scenarios.
Uh-huh.
Everything from a rebel victory to a stalemate to maybe somehow a peace agreement.
Right.
What are we thinking are some of the key things that are going to determine which way this goes?
Well, one big factor is going to be the level of support that the rebels get from their allies.
Okay.
Will countries like Turkey, the U.S., or the Gulf states step up and provide more support now that the rebels have made this move?
Right.
Or will they stay cautious?
Okay, and what about support for the Syrian government?
Yeah.
Will Russia and Iran keep backing them?
That's another big question, especially with everything else they've got going on.
Yeah.
Their decisions are going to have a huge impact on what happens next.
Yeah, it really feels like the whole world is watching
Yeah.
to see what happens next.
Absolutely.
What about the Kurdish YPG?
Ah, the Kurds.
Yeah.
They're a wild card.
Yeah.
They want their own autonomy in northern Syria,
Uh-huh.
and their relationship with the other rebel groups is complicated.
Right.
They could make things more stable, or they could make things a lot worse.
So unpredictable.
Very unpredictable.
Given everything we've talked about today,
Ugh.
what do you think is the most likely outcome?
Well, like I said before, it's really hard to predict the future in a situation like this.
Right.
But if I had to guess,
Yeah.
I'd say the most likely scenario is that we see the stalemate continue.
Uh,
I don't think either side has the power to win outright, and I don't think the outside powers are willing to get more involved.
so more suffering, more displacement, more uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a grim outlook.
Yeah.
But you never know. Things can change quickly.
Okay.
There could be some unexpected event. Maybe alliances shift. Maybe there's a breakthrough in negotiations.
Right. So we just have to wait and see.
Exactly.
What are some things that our listeners should keep an eye on?
Well, I would say pay attention to what Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the U.S. are doing.
Okay.
Their actions and their words are going to be really important.
Mm-hmm.
Also, watch for any signs of unity or division among the rebel groups.
Yeah.
That's going to be a key factor in how effective they are. And of course, never forget about the human cost of this war.
Right.
The civilians are the ones who are suffering the most.
It's really a complex situation.
It is.
Aleppo is like a microcosm of the whole Syrian conflict.
Yeah, you've got all these internal and external forces at play,
Right.
competing agendas,
Yeah.
and just a horrific human tragedy.
What's happening in Aleppo is going to have a huge impact
Oh, absolutely.
on the future of Syria
For sure.
and the whole region.
It really shows how interconnected the world is.
Yeah.
What happens in one place can affect us all.
Well, thank you so much for breaking all of this down for us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
It's a really complicated topic.
Yeah.
And you really helped us understand it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on what's happening in Aleppo.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
And we'll keep our listeners updated.
Sounds good.
So thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.